One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Y'all, nothing excites me more than talking about podcasting. I've had some people tell me, like, Crystal, you really light up when you talk about it. So that's how I know that you're totally into this podcasting stuff. And it just makes me laugh, and it makes me a little embarrassed. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, they think I'm a total nerd. I'm the biggest dork alive who is obsessed with podcasting. But it's true. And that is what, it's just the thing that lights me up so much. And I wanted to let you know that Profit Podcasting is going to be opening again for the last time in 2019 at the end of November. So if you want to be around this energy, I can't even tell you how much I get excited every single day. I hit the ground and I just think, I'm so blessed to talk about podcasting and teach other people about podcasting. If you want some of that energy, then I encourage you to join the waitlist for Profit Podcasting. You can find all the information and what the course is all about at profitpodcasting.com. And I encourage you to join the waitlist because this is going to be the last time the doors open in 2019. And I encourage you to grab your spot because this is it, guys, for 2019. So I want you to jump in. We have so many fun things in store. And if starting a podcast in 2020 is on your to-do list, you need to be in Profit Podcasting. So join the waitlist and I will see you there. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Profit Podcast. I never start things that way. Hang on, let me rephrase this. So I had a question. That's how I always start these things, right? I had a question because that is where all of my content comes from. It comes from questions I get, the questions I see. It's just, that is where the source of my content is. So take that into consideration. If you are thinking about starting a podcast, just go with the questions that you get and you see over and over again. But today We are talking about podcast artwork. So this is referred to as your artwork, your logo. It is the image that you see whenever someone pulls up your podcast. So that's what we're talking about today, how to develop it, what to put on it, and all the good stuff. So let's just jump right in. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Because if you've been thinking about creating a podcast for a while, well, I'm so glad you found this show. Think of this as the shortcut / time-saving version of searching Google and YouTube for hours and hours trying to figure out the world of podcasting. Trust me, as a busy mama of 3, I get it. You don't have a lot of time to be spent or wasted, I should say, searching the web, trying to find all the right ideas and all the amazing things that are out there, and you just end up overwhelmed. Trust me, I've been there, done that, took home the souvenir. But this podcast is going to help you in practical ways because twice a week we'll be delivering episodes that are going to give you steps to help you create a podcast your audience can't wait to listen to. So let's get right to it, shall we? So like I said, we're talking about podcast artwork today. And this is something I think that is very important to talk about, but it's also not like the end all be all of your podcast. You definitely want to have something that's visually appealing, right? So your audience is like, oh, what is this about? Or excuse me, I should say your potential audience, because the people that already know and love you, honestly, they're not going to care what your artwork looks like because they're there already for you. They could care less. Like you could have a sticky note as your logo and they would not care. Like, hang on, that's like a sidebar. I have always developed my logos. I have not had it professionally done. I've done it myself. Big surprise, right? Because obviously it is a masterpiece work of art. But when I was first developing the artwork for the Rookie Life, I legitimately had a sticky note as part of the logo I was creating. And I put a vote to the community. I was like, all right, which one do y'all like best? And the sticky note one did not win. So like a literal sticky note. Anyway, so the artwork is important because it's kind of the face of the podcast because a podcast is audio. So you want to make sure that you can visually, I don't want to say impress people, but because that's not really what it's about. You want to just make sure it's something that's eye-catching and it's on brand with what you're talking about. So if you, for example, are a podcaster that talks about yoga, but you have someone on a Harley riding off into the sunset, I don't know, maybe that has something to do with yoga. Like, oh, I'm going to live my best life riding my Harley and I'm going to go home and do downward dog. Like, I don't know, maybe that's your thing. But to me, if I were to see someone riding a motorcycle, I would think, okay, this is a biker's podcast. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so you want to make sure that your image, your logo really translate to what you talk about on your podcast. So I want to make sure that that was like super clear from the get-go. And another thing I want to address real fast, just because this is a question that I get a lot, and then we're going to get into like the tactical, do this, don't do that, whatever. But a question I get is, should I have my picture on my podcast? And my response is always, that's up to you. Because I've given a lot of examples in the past of podcasts that don't have someone's picture and they're still super successful. And I've seen podcasts that have someone's picture and it doesn't really matter. So it doesn't, like, for example, Oprah Winfrey, she has Oprah's Super Soul podcast. Her picture's not on there. Maybe because she's Oprah and everybody on the planet, which, another sidebar, my 10-year-old had no clue who Oprah was. Like, I felt, my husband and I both looked at each other like we have done a disservice to our children because they have no idea who Oprah Winfrey is. Oh my gosh. But he could name you every single Pokemon that ever existed. So anyway, but that is just something to consider. Like, do you feel comfortable with your picture in the logo of your podcast? If you do, then that's great. If you don't, then that's fine too. I mean, this is going to be, it's kind of like a gut feeling. Like, if someone tells you, you absolutely can only do it this way or that way, just run away from them because they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, I don't believe in that kind of stuff, that you can only do it one way. I actually know of several podcasts that have people on the cover and they're just showing their true personality. Either they're laughing or they're being crazy. And I look at them and I'm like, I can't wait to listen to that podcast. And then I've seen other ones that are fully animated. Like, they had a cartoonist draw up the whole logo and it looks fantastic. And I'm like, I can't wait to listen to that podcast. If you don't know this by now, I'm like a podcast hoarder. By the way, I listen to so many podcasts because I'm constantly trying to learn from other people and see how other people do this, because to me, I'm like a forever learner, right? What is it called? Like a forever student and I don't even know. I'm just making up words now. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, I just like to learn because I'm obsessed with this, y'all. This is what I do. It's what I love to do. So I am always trying to learning to bring you the best information and have, just the most up-to-date stuff all the time. So let's get into the tactical things that you need to know about podcast artwork. So there's two major things that I want to talk about: the title and then the actual image or picture. So let's talk about the title first. If you have not named your podcast, I'm going to recommend you go listen to the episode where we talked about picking the title for your podcast. I'm going to put it in the show notes. But this kind of goes back to, you don't want to have a super long title. Like, one of the reasons why is you can't fit that much text on an image and it look really good. So if I had, let me give you a for example. This podcast, what if it was called the Crystal Profit Podcast, where you learn how to start a podcast? That is way too much to say, first of all. And it's just too, like, you get lost after like 3 words. It's just like, nope, the Profit Podcast. And then I think of Rachel Hollis, always refer to hers. It's the Rise Podcast. And then Amy Porterfield, Online Marketing Made Easy. Those are all really short titles that you can fit onto an image and it doesn't get overcrowded, because I know I learned this in one of my marketing classes, but it was just like, for sure, less is more when it comes to words on images. And I mean, even within, and this is kind of like geeking out on you for a second, if you've ever run Facebook ads or you've ever tried to run a Facebook ad, they will flag you and they won't even approve your ad if you have too much text on it, because it doesn't look good. It does not look good if you have way too much text within an image. Like, Facebook says it themselves. They're like, no, we won't even allow this because it's not going to perform well. You're wasting your money. Just don't even try to do it. So it's the same thing. You do not want to add too much text to your podcast artwork. And I know podcasts that they don't even have the title on there. It's just an image and maybe just like one word. You know, if you had a motivational podcast, let's say, and then it was just a picture of you and then underneath it said believe, right? Like, I just thought of like the cat picture where it's like, yeah, like, we just hang in there or whatever. What movie was that? Oh my gosh. Was that the Lego movie? I think that was the first Lego movie where they have the cat picture. It's like, oh, hang in there. But, man, I'm just going off on all kinds of tangents today. I've had a lot of coffee today, so I apologize. But you want to make sure that you have something, words, if you do have them, if you have your title, that's great. But whatever words you have on there, make them count. Don't just slap stuff up there like just because. Don't put your name on there if you don't need it. So with me, I have, whenever I was developing my logo the first time, it was the Rookie Life with Crystal Profit. And I put it on my logo, and I'm not even really sure why. I really, like, in thinking back, like, I can't even remember the thought process other than I felt like it needed more text. And so if you're in that boat, if you've never designed a logo, you're not really sure where to start, I'm here to tell you that less is more, for sure. So the less words you can put on there, the better your image is going to turn out. And I've mentioned this before, but I use canva.com for all my logos, all my graphics. They're amazing. And they have so many templates that you can use, but I say that to go into my next point, because you have to make sure that the image, all the words, the pictures, like your completed logo looks great, really, really big, and really, really small. Because people are going to be listening on their phones. Like, let's be honest, most people listen to podcasts on their mobile devices. I can look at my statistics and I see that 80% of my listeners are listening on some type of mobile device or tablet. So you have to make sure that your artwork looks really good when it's small, but there are those people that listen either when they're at work or, you know, they're on their laptops or they're on their desktop computers. Then it's a lot bigger. The image is a lot bigger when they're on a computer. So you have to make sure your image looks really good when it's big too. So don't just concentrate on it being really, really small or really, really big. You need to make sure that it looks great whenever it's either size, because the resolution matters. Woo, let me tell you, I've seen this done really bad, and it makes you not look professional. It really does. It makes you not look like you're legit. It's like, you know, I'm all about free tools and taking advantage of, you know, being able to design stuff myself and to do like DIY stuff. But if it looks cheap, you better pay somebody to do it, or you better hire somebody, like swap services, whatever you have to do. But if you look at it and you send it to a few friends and they're like, ooh, yeah, I love you, but that looks awful, then you need to rethink things, because your artwork is a really big deal. So let me see. My next note is you want to make sure, while we're talking about being really big and really small, you want to make sure that you're always up to date with the latest requirements from the platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and I'm going to link to those in the show notes. That way, no matter when you're listening to this, it's going to have the latest version, because I could sit here and tell you what the dimensions are, but what if they change them tomorrow? So I'm just going to link to their pages on their sites in the show notes. So it's crystalprofit.com/episode 96. That way you can see exactly what's required on each platform, which, side note, they're all the same, or they're all like, they're around the same. So it's going to look great on either one. You just have to make sure. So if you're not designing it yourself, you need to make sure that whoever is designing it knows exactly what to do. That way it looks great. Like if you hire this out or whatever, you just want to make sure that they have the right requirements. But let's go back to the title. So if your title is too long, right? We've kind of talked about this. Then only put those key words on it, because the less text, the better. Now, with my podcast, when I was developing the logo, I had, and like I said, I'm using the word logo and artwork interchangeably. They're the same thing. But whenever I was developing the Profit Podcast, it just didn't look right when it was just the Profit Podcast. And I kept thinking, you know, people don't know who I am right? They don't know my last name is Profit. Maybe they'll see it and be like, oh, well, she misspelled. She misspelled the word profit, which if this is your first time listening and you didn't actually know that, yes, my name is Crystal Profit. That's why it's called the Profit Podcast. But it also has a really cool spin on the word profit. So that's why I used it, as I was advised by one of my mentors. Like, yeah, just like go for it. See what happens. So that's what I did. But when I did it, I was looking at it and I was like, man, it just feels like something is missing. And my tagline was too long. If you haven't listened to that episode about taglines, I'm going to link to it in the show notes. That'll help you develop your tagline. But I knew that I had these 3 words to work with. It's where entrepreneurs go to start, launch, and market their podcast. So I thought, well, I can put the words start, launch, and market. So that's what I did. I put the Profit Podcast, start, launch, and market. But then I thought, well, people don't know who I am. So I'm going to put with Crystal Profit. And again, I went back to my audience and I showed them, and this is something I highly recommend you do, whether you develop it yourself or you have someone else do it, have a few options. I say no more than 4, but definitely like between 2 to 4. Like those, you need to have a few options. Don't just develop something and throw it out there. You need to have a few options because you may think it's the best thing in the world and people will come back. Like your audience will notice stuff that you don't notice. There was somebody in one of the Facebook groups I participate in, they put up their logo. They were so excited about it. And I think that they got a little butthurt because people were like, it doesn't look great because you can't read the font. And then someone else said, oh, well, that picture of the background, like there's a fence in the background and that's distracting. And I'm sure that the person had never even thought about that kind of stuff. But this is the kind of feedback that you need. And don't take it personally. Like I've had issues with that in the past where I work so hard on something. I still have issues with this with my husband. I'll work so hard on something and I'm just like, oh, look at it. Like, this is my baby. Look what I created. And they immediately start critiquing it. And of course, it's nothing personal, but I guess it's just, we're having a little therapy session now. But, it's like, I would take it really personal. I don't do that anymore. So if you work really hard on something, just know that when you put it out into the world, people are going to come back. So only ask those people that you really value their opinion. If it's somebody that says, oh, I never listen to podcasts, I could care less about podcasts, then don't ask their opinion. Don't ask them what they think of your artwork. Go ask people that are already in your audience. Like, I actually highly recommend you poll people on social media because it's so easy to just put 2 or 3 images up on Facebook and be like, hey, what's your favorite? And then boom, now you know what your podcast artwork is going to be. So those are my suggestions. But another thing is I want you to include, and you can do this either in the title and the picture or just one or the other or all of the above. Like, it doesn't really matter, but I want you to include your brand colors.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
So we're going to talk about branding in the next episode, but I wanted to just kind of drop that in here because branding is so, so important when it comes to every stage of your podcast. Like, not just in the marketing, like it's kind of cooked into everything that you do. It's very, very important to have a consistent brand presence, like, because people, that's the only way they'll start recognizing, oh, that's Crystal's podcast because I recognize that color. Or, oh, I noticed that, that's a picture of her. Like, and I recognize her because she puts these silly pictures whenever she puts up a YouTube video. Oh my gosh, y'all. I've had so much fun with my YouTube pictures, and I'll just put like a crazy expression on my face, and it's funny. But anyway, that's another time, another day. But yeah, we're going to talk about branding, but I want to make sure that if you already have brand colors, put them on your artwork. If you don't have brand colors, make them up and put them on your artwork, and then write them down. That's all you got to do. If you work in Canva and you pick a certain color, you can click on like where you go to change the other colors, and it will give you the hex code, HEX. So it will give you this hex code. So it's the pound sign or the hashtag, depending on how old you are. But it's the pound sign with, I want to say it's 6 numbers after that. That's a hex code. And that is exactly what that color is. So you want to make sure that you know what that is, and you bake that somewhere, even if it's just a little tiny smidge of it, into your podcast artwork. Just that way it's consistent across all the stuff that you do, and it'll just help with your branding and marketing later. Okay. Oh, that was all about title, and I know we kind of went all over the place, but I felt like I really needed to hit home on making everything look good, really, really big and really small. So one more quick thing about the title. Don't use crazy fonts, period, the end. I don't care if it is your favorite font and it's super swirly. If you can't read it, if you show that to someone and they cannot read it, don't use it. You want to make sure that it's very clear and very readable. Like, it just has to be legible. That's like the basic requirement. It needs to be clear, not too much text, and legible. So that's the last thing I'm going to say about the title. All right, let's move on to the picture. So, like we said earlier, people ask, what kind of image should I use for my artwork? Should I do a picture of myself? Should I do a stock image? Do I need a professionally designed logo? Like, there's so many questions. So here's what I'll say about this. I think that if you're comfortable with it, using a picture of yourself can be really, like, it can work out to your advantage. I think that it would work out really great. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, then use a stock image, but be aware that that stock image may be on another podcast, or it may have been used by 50,000 other people on their Instagram or in their webinars or on their website or like all over the place. So I've actually seen this a lot more lately as more podcasts have come onto the scene. I will see an image and realize, oh, that's a stock image. That came from Unsplash, because that's where I get a lot of my stock images, is from Unsplash. And I'll see it and be like, oh, that's a stock image. Okay. Like, it's just not as exciting. Oh, I hope I didn't step on anybody's toes just now, because that kind of feels hard to say, because I've seen people that I know that do this, and I think it's a mistake. So if you are going to use a stock image or an image that is not of yourself, find one that you can't find anywhere else. And I know you're like, well, that kind of sounds like an oxymoron, Crystal. How am I going to find one? Like, I don't know all of the podcasts in the world. Well, but you know your industry. You know your category. You know where your podcast is going to show up. So go browse the artwork of the other podcasts there. Are they images of that person, that individual? Are they images, like, I'm always constantly looking at other podcast artwork in my category is the right word. And I'm just always looking through, because I just want to see, like, oh, how do other people do it? It's not a comparison thing. It's it's almost like an admiration, because I see some that are done really, really well. And then I see some that I'm like, I cringe a little bit when I see it, because I've seen that stock photo 1,000 times already, and I do this all the time. Like, I'm in the industry, so I see it, but I wonder if someone who's not in the podcasting world, but they're in the Pinterest world, I see this happen all the time on Pinterest too, and that picture comes up, and then they see it on someone's podcast artwork, do they go, this person's not legit? This person is lazy because they just used a stock image when they could have taken a picture in their backyard. They don't have to take a picture of themselves in their backyard. They could take a picture of a butterfly in their backyard and put the words believe at the bottom, and then bam, you got motivational podcast artwork. So just take that into consideration, because I don't know, that's just my gut reaction. So I don't know if that's right, I don't know if that's wrong, but that's just how I feel when I see people using stock images. So like I said, you don't have to take a picture of yourself, but I do encourage you find a unique photo that represents what you're about, what your podcast is about, and what you're trying, like the message that you're trying to get across. So while we're on that subject, I want you to think of a few questions. What does your audience want to see? And by that, I mean, like, how do they want to feel when they see your logo? Do you want people to see your logo and like just get super excited and motivated, and they're like, yes, I can't wait to listen to another episode of this? Or what kind of mind frame do they need to be in? Is yours more of a serious podcast? I actually have a few students that are coming from a background of doing therapy and doing legal work and doing things that are a little bit more like, they're not just the lighthearted fun, like, hey, let's just laugh and joke around. Like, it's serious work. It's not to say that it's boring, but it's more serious than maybe my podcast. Like, I don't want you to listen to this podcast and then just be like, oh my gosh, like, this is so, crazy, silly, whatever. And I also don't want you to be bored. So I want people to feel motivated when they see my podcast artwork, because I want them to see me as like, here's this chick, here's this mom of 3 little dudes, and she has this podcast and she's doing it from her house without a $50,000 studio. Like that, I know that's kind of like all the back end of, the thought that went into my artwork, but that's really what I wanted to convey. I wanted people to know that I'm nobody special. Like, I don't have... Y'all, I'm sitting in my closet right now. Come on. I've told y'all this before. If you haven't followed me on Instagram, I have Insta-storied almost every single time I record. I'm recording in my closet. My closet, guys. I'm teaching podcasting and I'm still recording in my closet. And there's a reason, because my office echoes so bad. And I haven't gotten the right acoustics that I need to have. And it's just easier for me to come in here than to try to deal with the echo and doing all this other fancy stuff. So I come in my closet and I record. So that is what I want to convey in my podcast artwork. I want people to know that I'm just showing up just as I am. And that's what I want for you too. I don't want you to think that you have to have a degree in audio engineering or broadcast journalism or have been on the radio or a million other things, like excuses that people give to why they can't podcast. Nope. I'm stripping all that down, because I'm just a regular mom. I'm just a wife. I'm just a daughter. Like, I'm just me showing up, sharing my stories, sharing my perspective, sharing my opinion, and sharing the things that I've learned along my journey that have helped me, so it can help you. And maybe I can give you some shortcuts and some how-tos and some strategies that I've done. And more importantly, some of the things like, don't do this, like the not to do's, like that is the message I'm trying to convey. And if I were to have paid someone $1,000 to develop a logo for me where I'm in this beautiful studio and I'm looking out on this pond, and like, I'm just trying to think of like the most ridiculous thing that you would not see me doing at this stage right now. Don't get me wrong. One day I'll be looking out the window at like from a lake house where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to go on my boat later and go on the kayaks, but that's not today. I'm sitting here and there is 5 baskets of laundry. They're all clean. Don't worry. It's clean. It just has not been put away. Most of it's folded. Not all of it's folded. Most of it's folded. And then there's one huge pile of dirty laundry. So that is my reality today. So that is what I want you to understand, is the podcast artwork is important, but it's also not something that you can't change later. who knows? I may change my artwork in 6 months, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years. I have no plans to change it as of now. But when I rebranded, I changed my artwork because I wanted to convey a different message than what I had previously done. So that's all I have for y'all today. So I have some tools and resources that I'm going to put in the show notes. So again, those are crystalprofit.com/episode 96. But I have a really great article that Buzzsprout, they're my hosting site. It's who I've used from the very beginning. And they have an amazing post about creating awesome podcast artwork. And they have a lot of examples there. So if you're like, I don't even know where to look, what examples to choose from, I'm linking to this. It's a blog post that they did. And it's got some great insight on what to have, what, like, do this, don't do that. And I've referenced this a lot, especially whenever I was developing my first logo, and even when I rebranded and developed my next one. Like, I went back to this and referenced this because I thought it was so good. So I'm going to link to that in the show notes. And then, like I mentioned, Canva, you can go there and look up their logo templates to get started. They have a lot of font outlines that you can, or font templates to use. Then they have some templates that can help you, like if you don't know how to center pictures or to how to, like, it just, Canva is so amazing for all that stuff. And then if you have no interest in doing any of this yourself, you're like, this is too much for me, then go to Upwork.com or Fiverr.com and hire somebody. Like, just, if you know this is not your expertise, you just want to show up and podcast, then hire somebody. But again, you have to make sure that they are aware of the requirements, because otherwise you're just throwing money down the drain. If you don't tell them exactly what's required of the dimensions and what Apple Podcasts and Google Play and Spotify, like, you need to know what those are before you ever pay someone, because I don't want you wasting money. So that's all I have for y'all today. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I would really appreciate it if you would go to wherever you're listening to this and leave us a rating and a review. Tell us what you want to hear about. Tell me some of the other topics, and let me know what you thought of this episode. Do you want more tactical advice on developing your podcast, or do you want to hear more about launching and marketing? I'm kind of going based off of questions that I see most often, but if there's something like hard-hitting that you just want to know about, like right now, leave us a review. Tell me what that is, and hit me up on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at crystalprofittx. You can find that in the show notes as well. And I encourage you to join our Facebook group. There's going to be some really cool stuff coming up beginning of November that I guess I can just go ahead and tell you now. We're doing a whole thing about grateful for podcasting. So I encourage you to join us. There's going to be some more information on my social media. And then, of course, I'm going to send it out to my weekly newsletter. I send out on Fridays. If you're not there, then I'm going to link to it in the show notes. That way you can join us. But yeah, grateful for podcasting is the whole theme of November, because I'm so grateful for this platform. I'm going to have some cool guests on, and it's going to be so awesome. So be sure to check out the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 96. And remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, "Send Crystal a text message." And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous, or If you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message, and I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.